Black undercover CEO sees racist manager humiliating black employee. What he discovers shocks everyone. Before we share this incredible story of justice and vindication, we'd love to know where you're watching from today. Let us know in the comments below, and let's connect with one another. The air in the Sterling Corp warehouse was always cold, a damp chill that clung to the concrete floors and steel beams no matter the season. For Elias Thorne, it was more than just a physical sensation. It was the cold of desperation, a cold that had settled deep in his bones and refused to leave. Every morning, he pulled on his worn work gloves, their leather thinned to the texture of paper over the knuckles, and faced the cavernous space with a heart heavy with the weight of his mother's medical bills. The stack of final notices on his small kitchen table grew like a monument to his failure. This job, with its meager pay and crushing hours, was the only thing standing between him and utter ruin. He worked harder than anyone, his movements precise and efficient, a quiet testament to a work ethic that went perpetually unnoticed. He kept his head down, spoke only when spoken to, and prayed for a miracle that never seemed to come. The flickering fluorescent lights overhead cast long, dancing shadows, making the towering shelves of inventory look like jagged teeth in the mouth of a great, indifferent beast. Today, the usual chill was sharpened by an unfamiliar tension. A new hire was starting, a man named James who looked to be in his late 30s, with observant, steady eyes and a quiet demeanor that reminded Elias of himself. But the arrival of a new face was not a cause for camaraderie. It was an opportunity for the floor manager, Mr. Caldwell, to assert his dominance. Caldwell, a man whose face seemed permanently pinched in a sneer of disapproval, thrived on intimidation. He was a small tyrant ruling a small, forgotten kingdom of cardboard boxes and pallet jacks. And for reasons Elias could never fathom, he had made Elias his primary target. As the morning shift began, Caldwell strode onto the floor, his polished shoes clicking an arrogant rhythm on the concrete. He stopped directly in front of Elias and the new hire, James. "Listen up, everyone." Caldwell's voice sliced through the low hum of machinery. "We have a new face today. This is James. I want you all to show him how we do things at Sterling Corporation. That means efficiency. That means no mistakes." His eyes, small and hard like pebbles, landed on Elias. "Thorne, you'll be training him. Try not to teach him any of your bad habits." A wave of heat washed over Elias's face, a stark contrast to the warehouse's chill. The other workers shuffled their feet, their gazes averted. They knew the routine. "Yes, Mr. Caldwell," Elias said, his voice barely a whisper, his eyes fixed on a crack in the floor. "What was that?" Caldwell leaned in, cupping a hand to his ear. "I can't hear you, Thorne. Maybe if you spent less time daydreaming and more time working, you'd have the energy to speak up." "Yes, sir," Elias repeated, his voice firmer this time, though every word felt like swallowing glass. His fists were clenched so tightly inside his gloves that his fingernails dug into his palms. He could feel the eyes of the new man, James, on him, a gaze he couldn't yet interpret. It wasn't pity, not exactly. It was something else, something deeper. An observation. The humiliation was a familiar poison, one he had learned to metabolize in order to survive. To fight back would be to lose the job, and to lose the job would be to lose his mother's care. So he stood there and took it, a silent statue of endurance, while his pride was chipped away, piece by painful piece. "See that you do," Caldwell finished with a smug smirk, before turning on his heel and marching back to his glass-walled office, the perch from which he observed his domain. The silence he left behind was heavy and suffocating. Elias finally allowed himself to take a breath, his lungs burning. He turned to the new man, expecting to see judgment or perhaps even contempt in his eyes. Instead, James simply met his gaze with a quiet, unreadable expression. "Don't mind him," Elias mumbled, the words tasting like ash. "He's like that with everyone." It was a lie. Caldwell wasn't like that with everyone. He was like that with him. "Let's get to work," James said, his voice even. "You can show me the packing station." Elias nodded, grateful for the man's lack of commentary. He led him toward the automated conveyor belt, the rhythmic clatter a welcome distraction. As he began to explain the process, how to scan the barcodes, how to select the right size box, how to operate the tape machine, he found himself relaxing just slightly. There was something calming about the familiar routine, about the simple act of teaching another person a skill. He demonstrated how to lift the heavier boxes by bending at the knees to save one's back. A small piece of wisdom earned through months of aches and pains. He showed James how to fold the cardboard flaps in a specific sequence to create a stronger seal. At their first break, Elias sat alone on an overturned crate, unwrapping a sandwich made of 2 simple slices of bread and a thin layer of peanut butter. He saw James buy a soda and a bag of chips from the vending machine. Instead of finding his own corner, James walked over and sat on a crate next to Elias. "Caldwell seems to have a real problem with you," James said quietly, not as an accusation, but as a statement of fact. Elias shrugged, not wanting to get into it. Complaining would do no good. "I just keep my head down and do my job." James took a long sip of his soda. "You do more than that. I was watching you. You're the fastest packer on the floor, but you don't cut corners. Your seals are clean, your labels are straight. You take pride in it." Elias looked up, surprised. No one had ever noticed the small details of his work, the care he took in a job that most considered mindless. To have it acknowledged, especially by a stranger, felt like a sudden ray of warmth in the perpetual cold. "Thank you," he said, the words genuine. "My mother always taught me, if a thing is worth doing, it's worth doing well." "She sounds like a wise woman," James replied, his eyes holding a flicker of something that looked like profound respect. They finished their break in a comfortable silence, a silent understanding passing between them. For the first time in a long time, Elias felt a pinprick of something other than despair. He felt seen. That flicker of hope, however, only made Caldwell's cruelty more pronounced. The following week, the manager seemed determined to break Elias's spirit completely. He assigned Elias the most grueling tasks: unloading a truck in the sweltering heat by himself, cleaning up a chemical spill without the proper equipment, reorganizing the highest shelves which required endless trips up and down a rickety ladder. Through it all, Elias persevered, his movements fueled by a desperate, quiet resilience. James watched from a distance, his expression growing harder, his jaw set in a tight line. He often found ways to help, subtly moving a pallet jack closer to where Elias was working or quietly taking over a portion of a task when Caldwell's back was turned. Small acts of solidarity that did not go unnoticed. The breaking point came on a Friday afternoon. A shipment of fragile glassware had arrived, and Caldwell specifically assigned Elias to unload it. "Be careful, Thorne," he'd warned with a malicious glint in his eye. "One broken box and it's coming out of your paycheck. And you know how much you need every single penny." Elias worked with painstaking care, his hands steady, his focus absolute. He was on the last pallet when Caldwell came storming out of his office, his face a mask of theatrical rage. "Thorne, my office now." Inside, a single, shattered box of expensive crystal goblets sat on Caldwell's desk. "Explain this," Caldwell demanded, gesturing to the broken glass. I don't understand," Elias stammered. "I checked every box. Nothing was broken. Are you calling me a liar?" Caldwell's voice rose. "This was found in your section, mixed in with the outgoing parcels. Were you trying to steal it? Did you drop it and try to hide it?" "No, sir. I would never," Elias pleaded, his heart pounding against his ribs. He knew, with a sickening certainty, that he was being framed. This was a trap, and he had walked right into it. "I'm tired of your incompetence and your excuses," Caldwell spat. "I'm docking your pay for the entire shipment, and this is your final warning. One more screw-up, and you're gone." Elias walked out of the office in a daze. The pay dock would be devastating. It meant he couldn't afford the new prescription for his mother's medication. The cold of the warehouse suddenly felt suffocating, the walls closing in on him. He saw James by the water cooler, who had clearly overheard everything. James's eyes were blazing with a cold fire that startled Elias. He walked over to Elias, his expression grim. "He's lying," James said, his voice low and intense. "I saw the manifest. That box was marked as damaged on arrival. Caldwell signed for it himself this morning before you even touched the pallet." Elias stared at him, his mind reeling. "What?" "He's setting you up, Elias," James confirmed. "He's not just a bully. He's a crook. I don't know what his game is, but he's trying to get you fired for a reason." This revelation shifted everything. It was no longer just random cruelty. It was a targeted attack. The knowledge didn't make him feel better, but it armed him. It solidified the bond between him and James, two men standing against a corrupt authority. Hope, fragile as it was, began to take root in the barren soil of his despair. He wasn't alone in this fight anymore. The next few weeks were a quiet war of attrition. Caldwell escalated his campaign, scrutinizing Elias's every move, timing his bathroom breaks, and writing him up for imaginary infractions. Elias, bolstered by James's quiet support, endured it all with a newfound resolve. He documented everything in a small notebook he kept in his back pocket. Every false accusation, every threat, every discrepancy he noticed. James, meanwhile, became his shadow, always nearby, always watching. He asked careful questions of the other longtime employees, piecing together a history of Caldwell's mismanagement, of missing inventory and cooked books that went back years. It became clear that Caldwell's racism was a convenient cover for something far more calculated. He was embezzling from the company, and he used Elias as a scapegoat to distract from the real losses. Anyone who got too close to the truth was systematically harassed until they quit or were fired. The final test came on the last day of the month, when inventory was due. A valuable shipment of high-end electronics had been delivered that morning. Caldwell personally assigned Elias to log and shelve the items in the high-security cage. It felt like a final, desperate trap. Elias worked meticulously, counting and recounting every item, his hands shaking slightly. He knew he was being watched. When he finished, he locked the cage and returned the key directly to Caldwell's office. An hour later, all hell broke loose. Caldwell called an emergency meeting on the warehouse floor, his face pale with what looked like genuine panic, but his eyes held a triumphant gleam. "The shipment of tablets is gone," he announced to the assembled workers. "Stolen from the security cage." His eyes locked onto Elias. And the only person who had the key today was Elias Thorne. The accusation hung in the air, thick and poisonous. The other workers stared at Elias, a mixture of shock and suspicion on their faces. I put them all away," Elias said, his voice trembling. "I locked the cage and gave you the key. So they just vanished into thin air?" Caldwell sneered. "I've had enough of your lies and your thievery. You're fired. Thorne, get your things and get out. Security will escort you from the premises." It was the end, the final blow. All his hard work, his dignity, his quiet endurance, it all amounted to this. Publicly shamed, branded a thief, and thrown out with nothing. As two burly security guards flanked him, Elias felt a profound emptiness. He didn't fight. He didn't argue. He was too broken. He caught James's eye one last time. The man gave him a short, sharp nod, a look that wasn't one of pity, but of promise. It was the last thing he saw before the heavy warehouse doors slammed shut behind him, leaving him in the cold, gray afternoon. He had lost everything. The next morning was the bleakest of his life. The eviction notice felt cold in his hand. His mother's pharmacy had called, reminding him the prescription was ready, a prescription he could no longer afford. He was sitting at his kitchen table, head in his hands, trying to figure out how to tell his mother they had lost their home, when his phone buzzed. An unknown number. He ignored it. It buzzed again. With a sigh of resignation, he answered, expecting a debt collector. "Is this Elias Thorne?" a crisp, professional female voice asked. "Yes," he answered, his own voice hoarse. "Please hold for Mr. Sterling." He frowned. The name was familiar. Sterling Corporation. He figured it was HR calling to finalize his termination paperwork. A moment later, a new voice came on the line, a voice that was deep, calm, and shockingly familiar. Elias? It's James. Elias sat bolt upright. James? How did you get this number? What's going on? There's a lot to explain, the voice said, and I'd rather do it in person. I sent a car for you. It will be there in 20 minutes. It's taking you to the Sterling Corp headquarters downtown. Will you come? Confused, but with absolutely nothing left to lose, Elias agreed. 20 minutes later, a sleek black town car pulled up to his rundown apartment building. The driver, a man in a sharp suit, held the door for him. The ride downtown was silent and surreal. He was escorted through a gleaming marble lobby to a private elevator that whisked him to the top floor. The doors opened into a sprawling office with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of the entire city. And behind a massive mahogany desk, dressed in an impeccably tailored navy suit, sat James. "Please have a seat," he said, gesturing to a leather chair. "My apologies for the deception, Elias. My full name is James Sterling. I'm the CEO of this company." Elias sank into the chair, his mind struggling to process the information. The new hire, his only friend in that miserable place, was the owner of the entire corporation. Sterling leaned forward, his expression serious. "My father founded this company on the principles of integrity and respect. After he passed, I began hearing whispers that some of our facilities were being mismanaged. I decided the only way to see the truth was to see it with my own eyes. I chose your warehouse as my first stop. And what I saw," he paused, his voice hardening, "was a disgrace." He clicked a button on his desk, and a large screen on the wall flickered to life. It was security footage from the warehouse. Elias watched, mesmerized, as the screen showed Caldwell, late the previous night, using his own key to enter the security cage and load the boxes of tablets into the back of his personal car. It was all there in high definition. "Caldwell has been stealing from this company for over 5 years," Sterling explained, his voice laced with cold anger. "He used intimidation and racism to create a toxic environment where no one would dare question him. He targeted you, Elias, because your integrity was a threat to him. He knew you were the kind of man who would notice things weren't right, so he had to get rid of you." Sterling turned off the screen. "As of an hour ago, Mr. Caldwell's employment has been terminated, and the authorities have been notified. He won't be managing anything but a prison cell for a very long time." Tears welled in Elias's eyes, tears of shock, of relief, of a vindication so profound it left him breathless. "That's not all," Sterling continued, his tone softening. "I saw your character, Elias. I saw your strength. I saw your decency in the face of relentless cruelty. That is the kind of character I want at the heart of my company." He slid a folder across the desk. "This is a check for all your docked pay, plus a significant bonus for the distress you've endured. And this," he tapped the folder, "is a job offer. I want you to be the new floor manager of the warehouse." Elias stared at him, speechless. Manager. It was more than he had ever dreamed of. "We're going back there now," Sterling said, standing up. "I think it's important that everyone sees justice being served." When they arrived at the warehouse, the atmosphere was thick with confusion. Caldwell was in his office, yelling at an HR representative. When Sterling and Elias walked onto the floor, a hush fell over the workers. Caldwell's face went from red to ghost white when he saw them. 2 police officers entered behind them. Sterling stood in the middle of the floor, his voice echoing in the vast space. He laid out Caldwell's crimes in clear, undeniable detail, his words a hammer of truth. He spoke of the theft, the fraud, and the culture of fear. As the officers led a sputtering, defeated Caldwell away in handcuffs, a spontaneous cheer erupted from the workers. It was a sound of liberation. Then Sterling turned to the crowd. "Your new manager," he announced, placing a hand on Elias's shoulder, "is Elias Thorne. He will lead with the respect and integrity that this workplace deserves." And effective immediately, Every employee here is receiving a 15% raise. The warehouse exploded in applause. Workers who had once averted their eyes now rushed forward to congratulate Elias, to shake his hand, to clap him on the back. He was no longer the outcast. He was their champion. In that moment, surrounded by his former colleagues, Elias felt the last of the bone-deep chill finally melt away, replaced by a warmth that had nothing to do with the temperature. 6 months later, the Sterling Corp warehouse was unrecognizable. The flickering lights had been replaced with bright, clean LEDs. The concrete floors were polished. New, safer equipment was everywhere. But the biggest change was in the people. They smiled. They laughed. They worked with a renewed sense of purpose and pride, under the fair and compassionate leadership of Elias Thorne. He had implemented a profit-sharing program and an open-door policy, transforming the toxic workplace into a thriving community. He had moved his mother into a beautiful apartment in a building with a full-time nurse, her health improving daily with the peace of mind he could finally provide. His relationship with James Sterling had grown from one of gratitude to one of genuine friendship and mentorship. Sterling often visited the warehouse, not as a CEO, but as a friend, to share a cup of coffee and look out over the floor they had transformed together. One afternoon, as they stood on the manager's platform, watching the seamless flow of work below, Elias turned to Sterling. "I still can't believe it sometimes," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "That day you walked in, I was at the end of my rope." Sterling looked at him, his eyes filled with warmth. "You were never at the end, Elias. You were just being tested. Integrity is what you do when no one is watching. But sometimes," he smiled, "the right person is." The story of Elias Thorne became a legend at Sterling Corp, a testament to the fact that kindness is not a weakness, and character is a currency more valuable than any stock price. It served as a powerful reminder that in the cold, harsh machinery of the world, a single act of decency can spark a revolution of the heart. What did you think of this powerful story? Share your thoughts with us, and don't forget to subscribe for more content that will inspire and uplift you.